Part I. Question 37. Answer Kaisei. The expansion of democracy through women's suffrages. Expansion of democracy in the United States has been marked by struggles for inclusion and equality, with the women's suffrage movement standing out as a significant chapter. This movement, which culminated in the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, was a result of decades of activism by individuals, groups, and government action. The fight for women's suffrage not only secured voting rights for women but also laid the groundwork for broader social and political advancements in the United States. Historical circumstances surrounding women's suffrage. The roots of the women's suffrage movement can be traced to the mid-19th century, a time when women were largely excluded from political participation and faced systemic discrimination in many areas of life. As outlined in Document 1, the injustices women faced included unequal property rights, limited access to education, and restrictions on public speaking. The Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 marked a turning point, with activists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott demanding equality and declaring that laws placing women in inferior positions were unjust. This early activism was influenced by the democratic ideals of the American Revolution, emphasizing equality and natural rights. Efforts to address women's suffrage. Efforts to achieve women's suffrage took many forms, including grassroots organizing, public protests, and lobbying. As described in Document 2A, suffragists engaged in activities such as mailing campaigns, marches, and picketing, with organizations like the National Woman's Party leading the charge. These efforts were nonviolent, contrasting with the more militant approaches used in other countries, as the movement relied on strategic agitation to garner public and political support. The opposition to women's suffrage was also a significant challenge. Document 3B highlights arguments from anti-suffragists who believed that voting would disrupt women's traditional roles and degrade their moral standing. Despite these challenges, suffragists persisted, employing innovative tactics like public relations campaigns and leveraging the moral authority of women's roles as caretakers and reformers. Impact of the women's suffrage movement. The ratification of the 19th Amendment was a landmark achievement that had far-reaching effects on American society. According to Document 4, the suffrage movement inspired new political leadership among women, paving the way for women to take on roles as lawyers, doctors, and elected officials. Additionally, as noted in Document 5, the strategies developed during the suffrage movement such as grassroots organizing and nonviolent protests served as a blueprint for later social justice movements, including the civil rights movement and campaigns for LGBTQ+ rights. The broader impact of women's suffrage is also evident in political representation. Documents 6A and 6B show that while women remain underrepresented in government and corporate leadership, their participation has steadily increased. For example, Jeannette Rankin's election to Congress in 1917 was a milestone, and the percentage of women in leadership roles has grown significantly since then. Conclusion. The women's suffrage movement was a transformative chapter in the expansion of democracy in the United States. By challenging systemic inequalities and advocating for voting rights, suffragists not only secured a vital constitutional amendment but also set the stage for future advancements in equality and representation. Their efforts remind us of the power of civic activism and the ongoing struggle to achieve a more inclusive society. Why this essay is structured this way. Introduction. The introduction sets the context for the essay by connecting the suffrage movement to the broader theme of democratic expansion and outlining its significance. Historical circumstances. This section describes the social and legal inequalities that motivated the suffrage movement, using details from the documents to illustrate the challenges women faced. Efforts to address the issue. Specific efforts by individuals and groups are explained with evidence from the documents, showing both the strategies employed and the opposition encountered. Impact. This section highlights the short and long-term impacts of the movement, drawing on both the documents and outside information to discuss political and social changes. Conclusion. The conclusion ties the essay together by emphasizing the legacy of the suffrage movement and its relevance to contemporary issues. This structure ensures that all aspects of the task are addressed in a clear and logical way, while incorporating evidence and analysis.